Hello and welcome to Intro to Programming. So today we're going to continue looking at formatting our web pages. But instead we're not going to be doing it in the page itself. We're going to be doing it in what's called an external style sheet. And here's kind of the big idea of an external style sheet. So last class we started looking at the style tag. All right, and we saw that we could put formatting rules inside of our style tag that would then affect all of the tags on that page. It was almost like setting the defaults. Like each of these tags would now have a default, and that's the formatting that would take over unless we specifically provided something else down in the tag itself, right? And it was basically a time-saving measure. Instead of having to format each tag individually, we could format a whole bunch of tags all at once. All right, so we're taking that same idea and we're expanding it. Because imagine you're some giant site like Amazon or eBay or any of those other sites that have thousands upon thousands of pages. All right, the style tag would be good, but it's still not going to get the job done, right? Because you wouldn't want to have to go into all 1,000 pages and modify what's inside of your style tag if you're doing some sort of site makeover. All right. Ideally, you'd be able to do it in one spot and have it affect all of the pages simultaneously, right? And that's basically what we're going to learn how to do today. Is instead of having to format one page at a time, we're going to learn how to format lots of pages all at once. And the way we do this is we put the formatting rules in a separate file. All right, so that's going to be in its own .css file, which is a cascading style sheet. And by putting those rules in a separate file, what we can do is we can link that one file into all of our pages. So all of our pages will look back at that one CSS sheet for the formatting instructions. And in that way, if we change that style sheet, it'll instantly change all of the pages that it's linked to. All right, so that's kind of the big idea, is taking the formatting outside of the individual page and moving it to a new separate location, which allows us to format a whole bunch of pages all at once. All right, so how's this actually going to work? Well, you might have noticed that in the style folder from last time, there was a third file that we did not use. All right, it was called style. And if you looked at the type, it was cascading style sheet document, or a CSS file. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open this file in Notepad++. So there it is in Notepad++. It's nice, it's blank, it's empty. All right. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to my finished cats.html. All right, so this is everything I did last time in cats.html for the cats, for the style lab. What I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight everything inside of the style tag, and then I'm going to cut it. All right, and the shortcut for cut is Control X. So I'm going to do Control X. That gets rid of it all, but puts it on my clipboard so that I can paste it someplace. And then I'm going to go over to style.css. I'm going to do Control V for paste. And I'm going to put all of that stuff right in there. All right, so this is exactly what I had before. All right, there's nothing different here. It's exactly what was inside of the style tags. All I did was cut and paste it over to my style sheet. And then I'm going to save it. Now, if you try to view your style sheet, all right, if you go to view in Chrome, here's what's going to happen. Now, don't look at my screen here because it's in a different place because I have a different version of Notepad++. But if I launch this, you're not going to see anything, all right? It's just going to be all of those instructions. And that's a pretty common mistake when kids are working on these style sheets. They'll accidentally go to view the style sheet. The style sheet is just the formatting instructions, right? If we want to see the impact of those instructions, we actually have to view the web page. All right, so let's go back to our cats.html. And now what we have to do is we have to link in this style sheet here. All right, so the way we do that is a link tag. So it's going to be a less than sign, the word link. All right, and this isn't link like, oh, I've got a link to another page. This is we're linking in a file. All right, we're linking in a file to our web page. And then we say REL. Let me zoom in a little bit. All right, REL equals, and then in quotes, the word style sheet, all one word, close your quotes. And we're going to do type equals, and then in quotes, text/CSS, and then close the quotes. Now, this first part is going to be the same every time you do this. So every time we're linking in a style sheet, all right, this part is going to be exactly the same. And then this last part's the only part that changes. So it's going to be href equals, and then you have to use the name of your file. So ours is called style.css. All right, so that's the name that we have to use. Now, again, we can just use the name because it's in the same folder as our web page. If it wasn't in the same folder, we would have to give a more precise location. So again, to make our lives easier in this course, we're always just going to keep the style sheet right next to the HTML document. So all we have to do is say quotes, and then ours was called style.css. I'm going to close my quotes, and then I'm going to close that out. All right. Now, if I save this, and then I go to view this page, what you're going to see is that it looks exactly the same as it did before. All right, this was the finished cats page from the style lab. Right, and that's kind of the point. All right, moving the formatting to this external file doesn't in any way change what you're doing. It just becomes a more convenient way of managing multiple pages on a site. All right, so instead of having to format each page individually, we can format all the pages at once. And that's why when you go to a website, like, pages have a similar feel. Like if you click around ESPN.com or CNN.com or Amazon.com or eBay.com, all of those sites have a similar feel from page to page, right? What's on the pages might be different. The content might be different, but the colors, the fonts, the organization, all of that's mostly the same because they're all pulling in from a single style sheet. And actually, you can have multiple style sheets that they pull in from. So certain pages might pull in from one style sheet, and certain pages might pull in from another style sheet. But the idea is it makes it much easier to maintain your sites because I can go in and change this style sheet. Let's say I wanted the font size to be 40 point. All right. And then all of the pages would instantly update. So when I refresh this, even though I changed it in that external file, it changes on the web page again because it's all connected to that file. All right, so the good thing is, like, the rules of formatting are identical. All right, so all of the stuff we did last class still applies here. All right, the formatting rules. The only difference is you're putting them in a different file, and then you're adding this link tag. All right, now let's talk about formatting in multiple places and what happens. All right, so let's say right here I have my LinkedIn style sheet. And in that LinkedIn style sheet, I said that my font for the H2 tag should be 40 point. All right. Now, let's go back to the file. And in here, I'm going to do H2 again. And I'm going to say font size 100 point. So the question is, if I do it in the style tag and I do it in the CSS sheet, which one is going to win out? Is my font going to go up to 100 point, or is it going to stay at 40 point? So let's refresh it and see what happens. All right, so if I hit refresh, I can see that the font size did not change. It's still 40 point. Now watch this. I'm going to take this link tag. I'm going to cut it. And now I'm going to put it up above my style tag. Right, so if I hit save, and then I go back, and I refresh it, now you're going to see that my font is 100 point. All right, so what's going on here? Well, I said this last video, but these pages are generated top to bottom. So when it sees this tag, it goes in, it links in that file, and it applies all of the formatting in that file. Then when it gets down to this, it sees a new instruction, and it changes the result. All right, that's why the order of these matter. Right, if I do the style tag first, and it makes it 100 point, but when it gets down to here, it gets switched back to 40 point. So it's not like one is always going to win out over the other. Whichever one comes last is the one that's going to win out overall. So a good way to kind of set this up is put the style sheet first. All right, and this can be sort of what you use as the most general sort of defaults for your entire site. All right, so this lets you set the defaults for your entire site. Then, if there's a specific page where you know you need to overwrite some of those defaults, you could go in and add a style tag. And as long as that style tag is below this LinkedIn style sheet, you know that this will overwrite what you did in here. And then if you have even more need to specify, you could go down into an individual tag and say style equals font size. And maybe I'll go in the other direction here, 5 point. All right, that will then override everything else because first it makes it 140, then it makes it 100, but then as it works its way down the page, when it sees this instruction, it's going to end up at just 5 point. All right, so these three different things, and then it's really tiny though, you can barely see it. These three different things allow us to sort of target our formatting. All right, we can put the most general formatting rules in a style sheet, and again, put that at the top of our head section. Then if we have stuff specific to just an individual page, we can put that below the style sheet in a style tag. And then if we have stuff specific to an individual tag, we can put that what's called inline formatting, and that will override everything else. So it gives us sort of this hierarchy so we can be more targeted. And the idea is to like have to do as little work as possible. All right, so we start with the most general rules so that we don't have to go into each page and set things. And then we can set page-specific rules so that we don't have to go into each tag and change things. And then finally, this is kind of like the last resort. We only want to have to do this inline formatting if there's a tag that is unique and needs special formatting that's different from everything else. All right, so this is kind of the last resort. But we can use this to target just a specific tag. All right, so that's the big idea, all right, is this idea of sort of targeted formatting and doing things inside of an external style sheet. All right, what you're going to be working on today is these files in the CSS folder that you should have downloaded from the email or from Google Classroom. And inside of this, there are 3 pictures, 3 HTML documents, cats, dogs, ducks, and a CSS file called pets. So if we open one of these, you'll see that right now it is a boring blank page, all right? But the top of this is a link, all right? So if I click on this link, it brings me to the dogs page. If I click on this link, it brings me to the ducks page. And if I click on this link, it brings me back to the cats page. All right, so instead of just having one page, I now have a website made up of 3 separate pages that are all linked together. So what you're going to be doing is you're going to be creating a style sheet that links into these sites, into these pages, so that we can format them all at once. Instead of having to format each of these pages separately, we're going to format them all at once with an external style sheet. And when you're done, it's going to look something, wait for it, something like this. All right. So there's a few things that are going to be new. This right here is using something called small caps. This right here is a box shadow. We're going to be moving things around the screen in a slightly different way. Notice my link changes colors when I put my mouse over it. And then as I click through the pages, you're going to see that they all have a similar formatting. All right. They all have that similar feel because they're all pulling from the same style sheet. Yes, they have different background images, but everything else is pretty similar because they're all pulling from that same sheet. Aren't they just delightful? I mean, look at that cute little duck, and it's this cool like underwater photo, and then you've got the cat who's upside down, and the dog. Oh, he's so tired, the little guy. He must be tuckered out. Yeah. All right, so this is what you're going to be making. Now, I'm going to start it with you. All right, and I'm going to show you how to do these color changing links. And then you're going to take over. All right. Here's like the lab document that you're going to work from. And it's set up the same way as the style lab document. All right. There's a bunch of bullets. And it's going to walk you through the formatting that you have to do. So it says, like, the first thing says the headings of the 3 pages are links that have been placed inside of H2 tags. We want to center those headings and use 30-point font. Make sure you format the H2 tag and not the A tag. All right. So very similar to last class. And then just like last class, I listed the different style attributes that you'll need to use. All right. So anything that you need to do for this lab is one of these that I've listed down below. There's also the link to the W3 Schools site, which again, you're probably going to need when you do some of these. Right? Especially like the font variant, you're going to probably need to look that up to make sure that you provide the right information that it's requesting. You're probably also going to need to look up the box shadow to see how that works. All right. So again, don't be afraid to kind of go through the site and click on the various ones to look up how they work and the exact syntax that you need to have it going. All right. So let's start this together, and then you can kind of pick up from where we leave off. So first thing that you're probably going to want to do is go to that CSS file and open all 4 of these in Notepad++. So I'm going to go through and open each of these in Notepad++. So I'm going to right-click, edit, right-click, edit, right-click, edit. Now, be careful because it can start to get confusing up here when you have lots of different files open. So there's cats.html from last lab, and then there's cats.html from today's lab. So I'm going to close the one from last time so that I don't get confused. And I'm going to close that style sheet from last time so I don't get confused. All right. Now, the first thing I'm going to do is link in my style sheet. All right. This is this pets.css file. I'm going to link that into all 3 of my pages. All right. Now, the link goes inside of the head section. So I'm going to put it right below my title. I'm going to do less than link rel equals style sheet, all one word, type equals text/CSS, close the quotes. And then this is the part that changes each time, href equals It's not style.css this time, it's pets.css. That's the name of my file. And then I'm going to have my greater than sign. Okay. Then I'm going to go to dogs, and I'm going to do the same thing again and again. All right, now, could you copy and paste it? Yes, you could copy and paste it, but if you type it out, it's going to help you remember what it is, and it's going to help you memorize it faster. So I'm going to type it out each time just to drill it home. And again, each time it's going to be pets.css because we're always linking into that same file. All right. And then I'm going to do it one last time, and I'm going to go link rel equals style sheet, type equals text slash css, href equals pets.css. All right. Now, remember that if you want the changes to work, you have to save these files. So I've got all three of these are red right now. Right next to the save button, there's a save all, and that will instantly save all three of these instead of having to go and click each one separately. So again, I'm just going to click on this now, and then all three of them turn blue, which tells me they're updated. Now, if I view these, right now, they look exactly the same, all right, because I haven't actually provided any formatting rules yet. All right, so they look exactly the same because I haven't done anything to them yet. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to go to pets.css. We're going to provide a rule, and we're going to see that that rule affects all three pages. Now, the rule that we're going to do together is the color changing links. And what's interesting about links is that they actually have different states. So you might notice this, but like when you're on a website, if you hover over a link, like your mouse changes, or after you visited a link, like it has like a darker purple color instead of the normal blue color. All of that's happening in like CSS formatting. So we're going to see how that works in here. Now, the first one we're going to do is just the basic link. So we know a link is an A tag, but then we're going to add hyphen and then link. All right, so this is formatting just a regular link when nothing has yet happened to it. So I'm going to put in my left curly brace. I'm going to put in a right curly brace. And then I'm going to say background color. And you can just pick any background color. You don't have to pick the same ones I do. And then I'm going to pick color. So I'm going to say that the background color is blue. I'm going to say the color is orange. And again, this is a hyphen link. Now I'm going to save this pets.css. And again, you don't want to view or run this page. Again, on my screen, it's run. On your page, it's going to be view in Chrome. This is just going to show you the instructions. All right, this is useless. It's not useless, but it's not what we want. You have to remember to actually view the HTML files. Now, I already have this open, so I'm just going to refresh it. But notice that this has changed colors. All right, now you can't really tell that it's orange. And the reason you can't tell that it's orange is because these are visited links. All right, and when links are visited, they change color. But let me unvisit them, and then we can you can see that they did turn orange. So give me a second. All right, so I've cleared them out. So now you can see that they are in fact blue with the orange background, just as I said they would be. But as I click on them, so once I've clicked on all of them, you're going to see that they then turn to that purple because they're now visited links, and that's the default formatting for visited links. But we can go in and we can change some of these things, all right? In addition to a colon link, there's also a colon hover, all right? And this is the formatting that takes place when your mouse is hovering over the link. So I could pick different colors for that. I could say background color. Maybe this time I'll make it red, and I'll make the regular color green. And if I save that, again, it's linked into all three of these files. So all three of them will update once I refresh this. So there it's blue. I hover my mouse over it, and then it goes red with green. All right. And then if I hover my mouse over it, it switches to red with green. Then if I hover my mouse over it, it goes to red to green. So I can not just format the link, I can format the different states of the link. All right. I can also go to A:"active, which is in fact the exact moment that you're clicking on the link. All right, so maybe for this one, I want to go background color yellow, and I'll go color, what color haven't I used yet? We'll say purple. That's great. All right, so now if I go back, and again, I have to refresh this. All right, so when I hover over it, it's red and green. If I click and hold down my mouse, you'll see that it goes to that red, that yellow and purple. All right, so again, there's the just default sort of link. Again, the text is purple because I visited it. I can hover over it, and then it goes red and green. I can click on it, and then it goes yellow and purple. So I have this ability to format sort of different aspects of the link. One second. All right, the last state that you can format is A:"visited. But the problem with formatting this one is that when you format this one, it kind of ends up taking over everything else, assuming the link has been visited. All right, so when I hit save here, if I go and go back to my page, let me refresh this. All right, now these links are visited, why it's now in orange, but when I hover over it, it's still a visited link. So that orange is winning out over the green that I set previously. And again, when I click on it, it's still a visited link. So that orange is winning out over the purple that I set previously. So most of the time I leave out visited because visited ends up sort of dominating over everything else. All right, so I'm just going to actually get rid of this and just leave the link, the hover, and the active, because then I think it's a little more interesting because you see it kind of changing as it goes. All right, so this is sort of the end of the introduction. All right, hopefully at this point you should have the link tag in all three of your files: cats.html, dogs.html, ducks.html. And then what you're going to do from this point on is put additional formatting rules in pets.css. So you're going to rely on this lab CSS file. It's going to walk you through what you need to do bullet by bullet. And you're going to provide sort of the different pieces that you need to provide. Now, the one thing that two things I want to draw your attention to is first, the second bullet here says each of the body tags in the 3 pages have a different class name. Create the necessary entries in the CSS file to give each page the appropriate background image. So here's what that means. If we go back to the original HTML files, you'll notice that this is, whoops, that's wrong. All right, this is body class equals cats. This is body class equals dogs. And this is body class equals ducks. All right. So when you're formatting these to get the right pictures, you can't just say body, because then that would format all 3 pages with the same picture. You're actually going to have 3 bodies in here. You're going to have body.cats, you're going to have body.dogs, and you're going to have body.ducks. And that's going to allow us to use just one CSS file, but have the 3 pages end up with different pictures. All right, so that's the one thing that's just a little weird, is realizing that for the body one on that second bullet, you have to provide .cats, .dogs, and .ducks to get the 3 different ones. All right, and then the second thing I want to draw your attention to is down here. All right, And this is how we're going to position some of the objects on the screen. All right, so let me go back to the finished product really quickly. All right, you're going to be moving the dog trouble resources part and the chapter 1, chapter 2, 3. You're going to be moving those around the screen. You're going to start to learn how to move things around the screen. So what you're going to be doing is, for that entry, let me bring it back to the lab document. All right, you're going to start with position : absolute, and then you're going to do top : and then you're going to have to play with some numbers here. All right, so you might start with 200 pixels, left 200 pixels, and you're going to see where that moves the object on the screen. And if it's in a good spot, maybe you can just leave it 200, 200. But chances are you're going to have to play with those numbers a little bit, see what happens when you make the number smaller, see what happens when you make the number larger. But you're trying to play with the numbers that are going to go here. You're going to be putting numbers here, and those numbers you're going to notice start moving it around the screen. So your goal is to get it roughly in this sort of positioning. It doesn't have to be exactly the same as mine, but you're going to play with those numbers until you get these two objects in roughly these positions. And again, you're going to do that by messing with the numbers that you type in here. So you won't actually be typing in the underscores here. It might be something like 200 px, 200 px, and then you're just going to play with those numbers until you get it in a spot that that you think looks good. All right. So other than that, it should be pretty straightforward. Obviously, if you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out. And the thing that I'll remind you is everything that you're using is listed down here. All right. If it's not listed down here, it's not something you should be using. All right. So I know last class we used the float attribute. You are not allowed to use the float attribute for this lab. You have to move the boxes around using this combination of sequences. You can't use float like we did last time. All right. So hopefully this was helpful. Again, let me know if you have questions, and best of luck. All right. Bye. I'm back. I just realized something. Well, I had a theory about the whole visited thing because it did seem weird to me. And it turns out I was wrong. So sorry about that. The order that you put them in matters. So if I put visited on top, all right, then it'll work the way I intended. All right. So, or the way we ideally would like to have it. So if I put visited on top and then I go link, hover, active, because the order of these does matter. Otherwise, it's not going to work the way you intended. But if I put visited on top, then you'll see that I can have all of those different options there. So now it's yellow, then it goes to red and green, then it goes to yellow and purple. So again, just a quick little aside there. I do make mistakes, so I'm not too proud to admit it. So if you put visited on top, you can actually have all those colors. But if you put it down on the bottom, it's not going to work. So the order does matter on that. All right. I just thought that was interesting, and I tested it, so I wanted to share it with you. All right. Have a good one. Bye.